Well, good evening, New Eden, and welcome to the first of many, I hope, up until the election, DNSBLACK video blogs. I'm not as talented as Ripper and some of the other people out there that blog, but I think I'm going to use this means of communicating with you guys out there who are playing EVE Online to introduce you to who I am, and some of my key platform items that I want to, put forward there for this CSM election. I'm not a block candidate, but my reputation as an EVE player extends beyond wormholes, nullsec, highsec. I've dabbled in all of those things, and I've dabbled in industry. I've dabbled in pretty much any of the things that this game has to offer. Or I have talked with, and I have people around me that do it a lot. So again, like I said, I'm choosing to blog this way instead of blogging, typing on my computer. So stick with me. It's my first one. I'm gonna hope to address a couple questions that are on my CSM election site, on the web, on the forums on EVE Online. And hopefully those questions will shed a little more light into the way I process things and the way I do things. The one guy that I've put off for a while is Rogan. Rogan asked me about my platform being about the community, and brought up some very specific items like EVE Chatter, which, by the way, Rogan, didn't even know existed until you brought me in on that. And put a very informative post up himself about 2 years ago that he directed me to, and I sat down and read. It talked about, I believe it's called status, and somehow integrating that into the entire EVE client. I think, in my personal opinion, I think CCP is beginning to progress more towards using these types of internet services that are out there. Twitch TV being the first that's now being integrated in and on the EVE client. So we can talk in two categories when it comes to items like that. One, it's the practical side, saying, yeah, those are great ideas, let's do it. And then there is the side I don't know and I don't understand, which is the legal side. I don't know if there's a money transaction between something like a Twitter or in CCP for them to integrate it into the game, or who pays who, because in the end it all does boil down to money. I mean, that's why they made EVE Online. They wanted to make some money. But I think the ideas you have are sound. One of the most frustrating things to me is when EveGate, and I was at the FanFest when it was being introduced, and I got really excited because it had some items that I was struggling with in-game to help direct my corporation. One of them being the calendar. I think there's a lot of improvements we can do to the calendar. I think the calendar by far is about one of the only things that I'd love to see integrated, and is still integrated with the EVE client and built on EveGate. But as far as EVE mails, I don't see why we can't be willing to give an out-of-game email that acts and collects just like an in-game email. Why did they reinvent the wheel? I mean, they built their own EVE mail server when there are a number of things out there. And I know, again, that's the legal side. That's the, this would be a great idea, but I'm sure there is, 10 feet of crap that I can't see, but I do know a very good idea. It's very similar to when you integrate your emails with your iPhones or your tablets, and it's all one server. And I think that's something that our game could really use, because one of the most frustrating things about EveGate really is the EveMail. The EveMail. I said it. The EveMail. I think it is a very useful tool, but it's not delivering what we need. The EVE mails are just garbage when they hit into the game. I mean, it's one of those things sometimes, it just doesn't transfer the information as well to the game from the real world the way I like it. So There are a number of things they can do. I don't really know if EveGate is what I consider community because, sometimes separating real life and your in-game character has to happen. And when we try to make our in-game character become more of our real life, it doesn't seem to transfer well. Meaning that I don't go and check EveGate like I would check my emails or maybe my Facebook or something like that. So I think there is a balance to be struck when dealing with those out-of-game services and integrating them into the Eve client. One of them I think would be fantastic would be Twitter. I don't even tweet. I mean, Snotshot says, if you could read in my post, he goes, just hope DNSBLACK never figures out how to use Twitter. And maybe that's a good thing. But I think tweeting is one of those things that maybe needs to be next. But I think we need to revisit EveGate. We need to revisit the idea of EveGate and maybe do some changes and some tweaking to it. I hope that answers your question about that. And as far as you kind of hinted at some things in another one of your questions, you said everybody kind of shares what they've done in Eve. I'm not saying I've done it all, but every Eve player has a curiosity. I referenced the train set. Everybody has their specialty. Everybody has their specialty in what they try to accomplish. But I promise you, a lot of the Eve players that have been around for a long time, they go out and dabble in a number of things. The latest thing that I've been doing, this is going to sound funny after 8 years, I began running some missions. Yeah, really. And I'm actually enjoying myself. And that's after playing the game for 8 years. And out of my mission stuff and my LP, and I didn't even know there was an LP store and all those things that are happening, I am building frigates and pirate faction stuff out there. We live in Curse, so I'm building Citables and Dramules and Daredevils, and I'm delving into the manufacturing side. So I'm looking at all those things. But I will say this. I play in high sec. I also play the game in low sec. I play the game in NPC space, and I also deal in 0-0 null sec warfare and politics. I've heard the frustrations. You can't be in this game for as long as I have and as long as a lot of other people have and not know the frustrations. But I do believe each one of those frustrations develops its own camp, because there's always two sides to every story. There's always one person that enjoys it, and there's another side that another person doesn't enjoy it. And that's what presents the challenges. But remember that having a competitive game doesn't necessarily have to do with likes and dislikes. Very similar to when the rules for soccer or the rules for American football or the rules for basketball or the rules for wrestling and boxing and those competitive sports out there, and the playing field is set and the measurements are discussed, and there are people out there that are monitoring those games and keeping it at a competitive level. When somebody comes up with a really bad idea, they get laughed at. Everyone that I think is on the CSMs tries to stay within the parameters of what the founding fathers of Eve intended for this game to be. And I think as we move forward into CSM9, we are in, I think, a transitional period in our game to the point that we have new devs coming in, we have new people coming in that might not have those founding roots into the old game of Eve. Now I'm not one of those old timers like, both ways, uphill, in the snow, barefoot, carrying the coal from my stove that takes 2 hours to light. I'm not one of those guys. Do I want to go back to, not warping to 0 on a gate? No, absolutely not. But I do think there are some elements of Eve that are missing, because when this thing first started out, no one even imagined. I don't think Rennie and Hilmar and Nathan and the people developing this game in the beginning really even imagined 10 years down the road. I think it was almost impossible for them. I mean, they were living, having their mom feed them. They were doing things just to survive. So for them to be that visionary is impossible. But when they created the game, they captured lightning in a bottle, and I'm using that term. And it's been on a slow, steady burn and growth. It's attracted some of the most unique executives in the world to come work for the company to push it another 10 years. So the voice of the community that I want to represent is not necessarily the voice of game development, the voice of people wanting to see certain things. All those great discussions that are happening in a lot of other threads. I want to see us not tread on the legacies that the real side of Eve, the true stories of Eve, have created. I mean, there's 10 years of history. There's the ACN wars. There's the early days in Pravi, CVA. There are so many great stories out there that human beings created. The developers didn't create it. They just kept throwing stuff in the sandbox, and it was the gamers out there seeking out something like this that began to write those stories. And if we have developers come in and begin treading on those and aren't basically giving up, an Eve history lesson to make sure that they don't make idiots out of themselves, we will have moments like the moments that took place during the last year. And I just felt we've got to have that person on the CSM. But that person can't be Eve illiterate. That person has to be somebody integrated, but that person also has to be a people person. That's when they began to encourage me to run. I mean, really, all I wanted to do was play with my train set. But now they got me stepping up and trying to become a member of the 9th CSM and bring my passion, bring my emotion, and bring my love for everything human in the game to the CSM table, so that those development groups who are out there building very unique parts of this game can hear that voice. I look forward to doing these blogs every day. When I get home, I'm going to sit down, take a look at some questions, and try to answer them as best I can. And it looks like I'm at about 12 minutes. I'm going to try to keep these to, somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes every day. So if you've got a question for DNSBLACK, you could do it a number of ways. You could either go to my forum post on the CSM election thread and leave me a question there, and I'll do my best to address it. And the table's wide open. You could leave. You can send me an in-game email, and I'll try to get the points out of your question and read it there. Or you could also send me a real-life email, and I'll have that posted down below on my blog, on my video blog for those questions. I really appreciate you watching the video. It's my first one. I'll get better at it. So I want to leave you with two things as I kind of trek out of here, approaching the 15-minute mark. First thing is, please encourage everybody to get out and vote, all right, and participate in the CSM process. This process belongs to us, okay, and it's very unique, and a lot of people, have laid a lot of groundwork for us as players to have a seat at the table. That's the first thing. And the second thing I want to leave you with, we got FanFest coming up. I look forward to seeing a lot of you people there. I think it's one of the single events that you can have in your Eve career of playing this game to go attend. I've been to some other, gaming events back 10 years. They don't even come close. So FanFest, Reykjavik, great town, great party, great event. If you really want to get involved and invest yourself into this game or into your train set, into your hobby, make a trip to FanFest. It's not too late to book your trip. It's not too late to get some tickets. Just show up, and I'm sure, after you buy them enough alcohol, they'll let you in the venue. it's a great experience. So this is DNSBLACK signing out. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys, and keep the questions coming. Talk to you later.